In the winter of 1956, a grandmother named Lovie Jean Whitaker lived in a two-room house behind a pecan tree in Mobile, Alabama. Her daughter worked laundry at a hotel 30 miles away. Every other Friday, a money order came through the door. $6.25. That was supposed to feed 3 children, keep shoes on their feet, keep kerosene in the lamp, keep the rent man from knocking twice, and still leave something for a future nobody in town believed those children were supposed to have. But Lovie Jean had a red Prince Albert tobacco tin pushed behind the flour sack on the pantry shelf. Before the rent, before the groceries, before the kerosene, before anybody could ask for anything, 1 dime went into that tin. When Lovie Jean died in 1973, the oldest child had become a ward clerk at Providence Hospital. The middle child was teaching arithmetic in Montgomery. The youngest owned a little cinder block repair shop with his name painted on the window. Lovie Jean never had a bank account for most of her life, but she had a system. It had come from her grandmother, who had learned it when freedom was still young and money was still something black families were not expected to keep. It passed through kitchens, church basements, wash lines, chicken yards, sewing baskets, and supper tables. It was not written in books. It was not taught in schools, and nobody at the bank ever called it financial literacy. But it built homes, it paid tuition, it buried the dead without debt, it kept children fed when $1 had to do the work of 5. Then, somewhere between new department store credit, television promises, and the slow breakup of neighborhood networks, the kitchen bank stopped being taught. What disappeared was not just thrift, it was architecture. Number 18 in this list started with a biscuit tin and ended with a college diploma. Number 10. Crossed state lines inside envelopes with 3-cent stamps. Number 5. Explains why one earned dollar could once feed a family, finance a church, support a grocer, and still come back around before leaving the neighborhood. These 25 rules were not poor people's habits. They were freedom habits. Number 25. The red tobacco tin. Every Friday, Lovie Jean put the first dime into a red tobacco tin behind the flour sack. Not the last dime. The first one. That was the rule. A poor household waits to see what is left. Lovie Jean did not believe in what was left. What was left belonged to trouble. What came first belonged to the future. By 1964, that tin had helped pay 2 rent shortfalls, 1 doctor bill, and a train ticket to New Orleans for a grandson who had found work. The tin did not pay interest, it paid attention, and in houses where the world was always trying to make money disappear, attention was the first form of wealth. Number 24. The Wednesday Circle. In Lovie Jean's neighborhood, 8 women met on Wednesday evenings after supper. Each brought $1. The money went into a cooking pot on the table, and one woman took the whole $8 home. Next week, another woman took it. The week after that, another. Some families called it a sou-sou. Some called it a hand. Some knew older words brought across the Atlantic like ajo and isus. The name mattered less than the discipline. There was no bank officer, no man in a tie deciding whether a mother was trustworthy. There was only a circle of women who knew who had paid, who had waited, and who needed to go next when Mrs. Arline's stove cracked in February. The circle moved her turn up 2 weeks. When Lovie Jean needed school shoes in August, nobody asked for proof. They already knew. The circle worked because shame was expensive, but memory was free. Number 23. The church envelope ledger. Before rent was counted, before coal was bought, before flour went in the sack, an envelope went to church. To outsiders, it looked like giving away money. Inside the community, it worked more like a ledger of belonging. A grandmother named Clara Bell Ramsey at Bethelami in Pensacola put 75 cents in an envelope every Sunday for nearly 20 years. When her grandson earned a seat at a teacher's college, the church scholarship board gave him the first $100. That envelope had been walking ahead of him for years. The church was not just a sanctuary, it was the savings institution that would take a woman seriously when a bank would not let her enter through the front door. The envelope went into the plate. The help came back through the side door. That was the ledger. Number 22. 2 pots on Monday. Monday morning was not a meal, it was a plan. One black pot held beans, the other held greens. The beans became Monday supper with cornbread, Wednesday soup with onions, Friday mash for biscuits, and Saturday rice, if there was rice. The greens took flavor from one smoked bone, then the pot liquor stretched into gravy. A grandmother named Odessa Freeman in Jackson, Mississippi, could feed 7 people across 5 suppers from a sack of beans, a bone, and a skillet of cornmeal. Nobody called it meal planning. They called it knowing what a pot could do. Modern money advice says to track spending. Odessa tracked transformation. She did not ask, "What can I buy?" she asked. "How many times can this become something else?" That question kept children full. Number 21. The Burial Dime Book. At the back of many churches, one woman kept a small black notebook. Beside each name she wrote a mark when the dime was paid, 10 cents a week. When death came, and it came too often in families with hard work, bad doctors, dangerous roads, and no safety net, the burial society paid for the casket, the preacher's travel, the cemetery plot, and the meal afterward. One dime looked small. An unpaid funeral did not. In Birmingham, Savannah, Norfolk, and East St. Louis, those little books became the roots of larger black insurance companies and mutual aid societies. Institutions did not begin as marble buildings. They began as nickels, dimes, and one woman with a pencil who would not let grief become debt. Number 20. The Sunday clothes calendar. Every child had church clothes, school clothes, and yard clothes. The categories were not suggestions. A dress that went to church did not climb trees. A school shirt did not scrub steps. A yard shirt did not sit in the front pew. Lovey Jean kept a paper calendar inside the wardrobe door. Shoes were polished on Friday. Cuffs were checked on Saturday. And every garment rotated so nothing wore out before its time. People mistook the children for better off than they were. That was the point. Dignity was expensive if you bought it new every season. It was possible if you protected it all week. The calendar was not vanity. It was armor with buttons. Number 19. The egg money was hers. If there were chickens, the eggs belonged to the grandmother. Not because she was selfish, because every house needed money. Nobody could spend in a panic. On Saturday mornings, Lovey Jean's neighbor, Miss Vina, sold eggs behind 2 white kitchens and 1 boarding house. The coins went into an apron pocket tied with a knot. They did not go into the grocery purse. They did not go to a son with a hard luck story. They did not vanish into tobacco bus fare or somebody else's emergency by Christmas. The egg money bought a coat. By spring, it paid a dentist. By summer, it became school supplies. The lesson was quiet but severe. A woman who controlled no money controlled no rescue. Number 18. The Biscuit Tin Tuition Fund. A blue biscuit tin sat under the loose board in Ruth May Collins's pantry in Selma. Every payday, a quarter went in. Every time she sold extra greens, another coin went in. When a white employer gave her old jars or scrap cloth, she turned them into something useful, sold what she could, and put the money in the tin. For 12 years, nobody knew the amount. Then her granddaughter's college acceptance arrived. Ruth May lifted the loose board, opened 3 biscuit tins, and counted enough money for the first year of tuition travel, books, and 2 white blouses. The town bank had never loaned her anything, but the kitchen had been lending all along. The interest was time. The collateral was silence. The payoff was a girl leaving home with her name spelled correctly on a college form. Number 17. 1 hen, 7 meals. Saturday chicken was not one dinner. It was a schedule. The best pieces waited for Sunday after church. The back and wings went into broth. The feet strengthened greens. The liver became gravy. The bones made soup. The fat seasoned cornbread. A careless family ate a chicken once. A grandmother made the chicken work until Wednesday. In Atlanta, a grandmother named Nanny Ruth Porter fed 6 children from 1 hen bought at the curb market. She was not stretching food because she loved scarcity. She was refusing to let waste steal from next week. Every bone had a job. That was how she looked at money, too. Number 16. The storm pantry. In November, when prices were lower and the air cooled, grandmothers filled the pantry as if a storm were coming. Because a storm was always coming. Flour in tins, sugar in jars, cornmeal sealed tight, peas in sacks, coffee locked away like medicine, lard covered and guarded, soap bought in bars when there was a little extra. The storm could be rain. It could be a layoff. It could be the landlord. It could be a child with fever. It could be a white store owner raising prices because he knew who had no choice. A stocked pantry was not clutter. It was independence stacked on a shelf. Number 15. The quilt bank. On the 3rd Saturday, women brought scraps, outgrown dresses, torn aprons, shirt sleeves too thin at the elbow, flour sacks washed soft. Every piece carried the record of a child who had grown, a meal that had been made, a body that had worked. They stitched those scraps into quilts. 1 quilt went to the family with a new baby. 1 went to the widow whose room would not hold heat. 1 went to the child leaving for school up north. 1 went to the house where coal money had run out. No one in the circle said, "We are building household capital." But that is what they were doing. They turned waste into warmth. They turned sewing into insurance. They turned memory into a blanket heavy enough to keep somebody alive. Number 14. No credit at the company counter. Black grandmothers feared certain words. "Put it on my account" was one of them. In farm country, the store ledger could become a chain. A family bought flour in March, shoes in May, medicine in July, seed in August. And by settlement time the paper always seemed to say they owed more than they earned. A grandmother named Elnora Bates in the Delta made her grandchildren stand outside the commissary while she paid cash for salt and matches. She would walk hungry before she signed a ledger she did not control. That was not stubbornness, that was history. She had seen debt wear a friendly face and carry a knife behind its back. Number 13. The drawer ladder. The bottom drawer held toddler clothes. The middle drawer held school clothes. The top drawer held Sunday pieces waiting for the next child. Everything was folded by size, season, and future owner. A coat could move through 4 cousins. A dress could be lengthened, shortened, turned, patched, and finally cut into quilt squares. A pair of trousers could become school pants, then yard pants, then patches for another pair. The drawer ladder taught children a fact that modern advertising tries to bury. New is not the same as valuable. A thing was valuable if it still had work left in it. Number 12. The funeral supper jar. Beside the church kitchen window, there was often a jar with a handwritten label, "Funeral Meal." A nickel after service. A dime from a woman who had a good week. A quarter from a man with steady factory work. No speech, no campaign, just coins in glass. When someone died, the jar became ham, rolls, greens, pound cake, coffee, and paper napkins. The family did not have to choose between burying someone and feeding mourners that mattered. Because grief is heavy enough without adding a bill to it, the jar said. When your house breaks open, the whole neighborhood will bring a plate. Number 11. Lie-away without a store. Before department store lie-away reached many black families, the neighborhood had its own version. A shoemaker named Isaiah Cole in Montgomery kept a shelf in the back room. A child's name went on a slip of paper, 50 cents in March, 50 cents in April, 50 cents in May. By August, the shoes were paid. No interest, no penalty, no clerk rolling her eyes, no humiliation at the counter. The shoemaker knew the grandmother would finish paying because she had never failed him. The grandmother knew the shoes would still be there because he had never cheated her. Credit turns need into profit. Trust turned need into a schedule. Number 10. The migration letter money. Before a family moved north, somebody wrote home, a cousin in Detroit, a nephew in Chicago, a church member in Cleveland. The letter said which plant was hiring, which landlord was crooked, which boarding house had clean sheets, which preacher would meet the train, and whether the foreman took black men on the day shift inside the envelope. There might be $1. Sometimes two. Sometimes only a railroad address and a warning. That letter was a financial instrument. It reduced risk. It carried information. It moved capital. It helped a grandmother decide when to send a son, when to keep him home, and who could be trusted on the other end. A 3-cent stamp could be worth more than a bank loan if it told you where not to go. Number 9. The soap marriage. A grandmother did not throw away a soap sliver. She wet the old sliver, pressed it into the new bar, and left it overnight. By morning the two had married. Children laughed at this until they needed shoes. Then the lesson became clear. Waste rarely looks like $1 leaving. It looks like a corner of soap, a spoon of grease, a scrap of cloth, a heel of bread, a lamp left burning, a nickel spent because nobody wanted to bend down and pick up the small thing. Grandmothers knew the small things were where money leaked, so they sealed the leaks. Number 8. The Christmas jar. Every household wanted children to have Christmas. But Christmas on credit could poison January, so a jar sat in the cupboard all year. Pennies, nickels, dimes, sometimes a folded dollar. It did not open in July. It did not open for a sale. It did not open because somebody felt sad and wanted to feel rich for one afternoon. It opened in December. Some years the jar bought dolls, oranges, candy, and socks. Some years it bought one toy to share, and a big Sunday dinner. Some years it bought only ribbon and peppermint, but nothing followed the family into the new year demanding payment. Joy was allowed. Debt was not allowed to come dressed as joy. Number 7. The cash row. In many gardens, one row was not for the family. It was for cash. Mustard greens, sweet potatoes, butter beans, tomatoes if the soil allowed. The children weeded it before school because that row had a purpose beyond supper. On Saturday, the grandmother sold what she could at back doors, church steps, or to a grocer who knew her produce was clean. The money did not mix with food money. It went to the tin. That one row could buy school tablets, medicine, bus fare, or a winter coat. A garden fed the body. The cash row fed the future. Number 6. The standing order. A good black grocer knew his families. He knew who needed flour every Saturday. He knew who could pay on Friday but not Thursday. He knew which grandmother wanted coffee ground coarse and which one would not buy sugar unless the price held steady, so he set aside standing orders. 1 sack of flour, 1 pound of sugar, coffee, meal, a little lard, maybe beans if the price was kind. The family got stable food. The grocer got loyal trade. The money stayed on the block long enough to do work. A white store could sell goods. A neighborhood grocer could stabilize a household. That difference built more than a business. It built a wall against panic. Number 5. The dollar that walked slow. There was a time when $1 in a black neighborhood did not leave quickly. A man earned it at the mill. He paid the black grocer. The grocer paid the black barber. The barber put money in the church plate. The church bought from the black undertaker, the printer, the seamstress, the carpenter. The carpenter deposited at the black bank, or paid dues to the mutual aid lodge. The money kept walking, slowly. Every time it changed hands, it fed another piece of the community. That was the architecture. A fast dollar makes a receipt. A slow dollar builds an institution. When those neighborhood loops broke, income still came in, but it left before it could become power. Number 4. The tithe before the rent. To modern ears, this rule sounds impossible. Give first, even when you barely have enough. But in many black households, the tithe was not only theology. It was a grandmother put $1 in the plate, and months later, when the rent was short, the deacons knew her name. When a child needed school fees, the missionary society knew the child. When a family had no coal, the church did not need a background check. The tithe was a moral account in a world that denied financial accounts. It was not magic. It was mutual obligation with hymns around it. Number 3. Never sign what you cannot read. This rule was spoken with a different tone. Not advice. Warning. A contract, a receipt, a land paper, a wage sheet, a loan form, a hospital form, a school document, a furniture agreement. Read it. If you cannot read it, find someone who can. If they rush you, slow down. If they laugh, take the paper home. If they refuse, walk away. Families had lost land, wages, furniture, and freedom of movement to papers that said one thing, while a man behind a desk said another. A grandmother in Durham named Miss Althea made her grandchildren read every line of the light bill out loud. Not because the bill was complicated, because she was training their eyes before the world tried to train their fear. Number 2. The quiet account. Some grandmothers kept money nobody knew about, not because they were dishonest, because they understood pressure. A grown son could ask, a husband could demand, a daughter could cry, a landlord could threaten, a neighbor could borrow and never return. Emergencies could multiply until every visible dollar had a hand reaching for it. So there was a quiet account, maybe in a bank across town, maybe in a postal savings book, maybe in a tin under the floor, maybe in cash folded inside a Bible cover. The money stayed invisible until the emergency was worthy. A daughter leaving a dangerous marriage, a tuition bill due on Friday, a train ticket out, a doctor who demanded cash, a child who needed a door open before the door closed forever. The quiet account was not secrecy. It was mercy protected from noise. Number 1. Put something aside before anyone else gets paid. This was the rule beneath all the rules. Not when the bills were paid. Not when times were good. Not after the children's, not after the rent man smiled. Not after the store was satisfied. First, a coin, a dime, a dollar, a folded bill, a little money from eggs, a little money from greens, a little money from laundry, a little money from sewing. First, the amount mattered less than the order. Order is what turns That is what Lovie Jean Whitaker knew. That is what Clarabelle, Odessa, Ruth May, Nanny Ruth, Elnora, and Althea knew. They were not waiting to become rich before they acted like stewards. They were stewards because the world had made waste too dangerous. They built a bank with no sign on the door. The teller was a grandmother. The vault was a pantry. The deposits were dimes. The withdrawals were tuition, rent, shoes, funerals, train tickets, coats, medicine, and second chances. They did not call it wealth management. They called it keeping house. But keeping house was never small. In a country that tried for generations to keep black families from land, credit, wages, safety, and inheritance, these women built another kind of inheritance from discipline. Not perfect, not romantic, not easy, but real. A red tin behind the flour sack, a jar by the church kitchen, a dime book in the back pew, a garden row for cash, a letter with $1 inside, a quiet account nobody could touch. The rules are not gone because they stopped working. They are gone because fewer people were taught where to look. The kitchen bank is still there. It opens the moment the first coin goes in.